He said I walked away with nothing. That's what he told his friends. What he posted online, under a photo of him clinking champagne with his new fiancée. Clean break. No drama. She got nothing. I kept it all. And everyone applauded his version. Everyone, except me. Because Scott never reached page 7 of the prenup. I had framed it in cream cardstock. Printed every clause with precision, every comma intentional. I let him skim it on a flight to Miami, 3 months before the wedding. He stopped at page 3. Said, "Looks good to me." And signed it with a flourish, too arrogant to read what didn't serve him, and back then, I smiled. Tucked it away in a fireproof folder. Not because I expected betrayal. But because I knew men like Scott don't check the fine print when they believe they'll always win. It wasn't revenge. It was preparation. The divorce came on a Tuesday. An email from his lawyer. Dry. Surgical. Stating, per terms of the prenuptial agreement, Ms. Monroe is entitled to no assets. No negotiation. No conversation. Just a PDF. And silence. I didn't reply. Not immediately. I made tea. Sat on the velvet stool in my office. Opened the drawer with the folder. Unclipped the document. Turned to page 7. It was still there. The clause my Aunt Clarice had insisted I include. Should Mr. Reynolds pursue divorce on grounds of incompatibility or personal fulfillment, the assets acquired post-marriage funded by Ms. Monroe's earnings shall be equitably redistributed. In her favor. Legal language. Elegant, cold, and binding. He had never read that line. I closed the folder. Took a photo of page 7. Sent it to my lawyer with the subject line, "He forgot this." And nothing else. No emojis. No anger. He posted a video that same week. Standing in his new condo. New chapter. Clean slate. I watched it once. Not for pain. For record. Because even silence needs documentation. He toasted freedom with a woman half my age. Said I was gracious in letting go. What he didn't know, what no one knew, was that I was never empty-handed. I was holding something heavier than spite. I was holding proof. And timing. Clarice called me that Friday. "You ready?" I said. He signed it. She laughed softly. A man who won't read the fine print deserves the consequences printed in it. I smiled for the first time that week. I didn't post. Didn't comment. Didn't send warnings. I let him perform. Let him gloat. Let him announce that I was left with nothing. Because some truths need to wait until they're undeniable. Until they're legal. Until the same mouth that said, "She got nothing," receives a certified letter with a balance sheet and a clause he never bothered to learn. Until page 7 speaks for me. And makes it final. He thought I had nothing. But what I had couldn't be seen. Couldn't be toasted. Couldn't be worn. It was a line on paper, written by a woman who never forgets to read everything, twice. We met at a business conference in Boston, surrounded by startup hopefuls and ambition in the air. He wore a tailored navy suit. I was multitasking, balancing coffees, programs, networking cards. He introduced himself as Scott Reynolds, with a firm handshake and unruffled confidence. We talked about logistics, strategy, design. I was drawn in by his vision. He invited me to a dinner that night. I agreed, because I believed in collaboration. We clicked easily. The kind of partnership I thought I wanted. And so our story began. We dated long distance, him in Chicago, me in New York. He'd visit, bringing suits I picked out and snacks I loved. I admired his ambition and drive, he admired my creativity and calm. Conversations about partnership turned into dreams about a future. We moved in together after a year. Merged schedules, shared expenses. He treated me like an equal on stage, and off. But only until the stage lights faded. Within 2 years, I'd launched my interior design firm. He supported me, loudly, at every event and presentation. My success became us. He said, "Your talent elevates us." But I didn't realize how much it elevated him, funding his trips, underwriting the startup phases of his business. I accepted that role. Proud, trusting. We got married after 4 years. A clear, rational decision, no fairy tale, just contracts, community, family. Scott joked we planned it like a merger. He said, "Together, we're unstoppable." I believed him. And I believed in us. In the first years, we were a team. We reconfigured his logistics startup and my design firm. Sometimes I'd work late on blueprints, he'd close deals over cocktails. Dinner nights were evaluated for ROI, literal and emotional. We maintained spreadsheets for goals and budgets. It felt productive to be aligned. Until productivity overshadowed presence. When my firm got recognition, he took pride. He called me creative force. I smiled and leaned in. But late nights at work, conference trips, networking dinners replaced dates. The man who cherished design plans stopped sketching out our future. And I didn't notice at first. Didn't realize the blueprint was changing. Our prenup was part of planning. We discussed fairness, division, expectations. I brought Clarice on board to help structure it. He brushed through it, signed pages 1 to 3, asked a few questions. Then said, let's finalize. I didn't push him further. Because I felt safe and confident. Then came my biggest opportunity, an international project. Costly, ambitious, time-consuming. He encouraged it, took over household duties for months, handled childcare, errands, meals. I believed he was building a future for us, with me at the center. But he'd already begun placing others off stage. We welcomed our first child shortly after. He was present at birth, supportive, smiling. He looked like he believed in this, us, again. But before dinner ended, he slipped into silence. He became busy again. Dishwasher hum replaced lullabies. His phone buzzed more than my happiness. I remember the first night he didn't kiss my forehead before bed. He said he was tired from the office. I touched his hand. He pulled away. It hurt more than any argument could have. That night, I realized something had changed. Something was fading. But I wasn't ready to admit what that meant. The company he co-founded began scaling. He was elevated. Eloquent in interviews. Broadcasted success. My firm provided the funds and stability our home needed. He called it a team effort, but the recognition belonged to his vision. And I accepted that too, because a blueprint balanced. Only when both sides support it. By the 8th year, we were successful, but distant. Milestones were ticked off. The routine remained. Conversations were calculated. Even love became efficient. He talked about growth, returns, projections, never about us. And I began to wonder if we were still side by side, or if he had drafted someone else into his plan. He assured me it was just a busy season. But I knew, without saying, that seasons end. And so do people. It started with receipts, barely hidden, never explained. Dinner charges for 2 in cities he wasn't supposed to be in. Boutiques I didn't shop at, brands I didn't wear. He said they were client expenses. But his tone was too even, too smooth. Like someone rehearsing the same lie. And I didn't press. At first. He changed his passwords. Just tightening security, he claimed. But mine stayed the same. We no longer shared calendars. I found myself checking hotel bookings. In silence. Not because I didn't trust him, but because I no longer trusted how easily I excused his distance. He stopped saying we. Our home became my space. Our plans became your side of things. Language is subtle, but it tells you everything. And I heard it. In boardrooms. And in bed. He hosted meetings at home more often. Asked me to keep it down during calls. Closed the door to his office, something he never used to do. I once caught a glimpse of someone on his screen, a woman leaning in too close, laughing like they shared a secret. He said it was just marketing. He missed our anniversary. Claimed it was an honest mistake. Said he thought it was next week. We had celebrated it on the same date for 8 years. I had reminders. He had none. But he remembered to send flowers. To his assistant. He began comparing me to women we passed on the street. To entrepreneurs he met at networking events. You should think about updating your brand, he once said. He meant my wardrobe. He meant my face. He meant I wasn't enough anymore. He stopped wearing his wedding ring. Said it bothered him while typing. But kept a tan line on his finger, clean and fresh. He had taken it off recently. Too recently. It sat in his drawer like a placeholder. Or a forgotten script. When I confronted him, gently, he smiled. That's your insecurity, not my intention. He always had language to protect himself. Always wrapped red flags in logic. He didn't raise his voice. He lowered it. So I'd second-guess my instincts. He no longer asked about my day. No longer noticed when I dressed up. My success didn't interest him anymore, only his own. He asked more about money than meaning. And when I spoke, he looked past me. At nothing. At everything but me. He unfollowed me on social media. I noticed after a gala I hosted. I wore emerald silk and gave a speech about women in leadership. He never liked the post. Never commented. But someone tagged him that night, with a woman wearing my dress design. I started receiving anonymous messages. Screenshots. A hotel. Bar photo. A restaurant reservation. All with captions like, just so you know. I didn't respond. I saved everything. He started traveling more. Last minute, unplanned. No itinerary, no transparency. The man who once documented every flight now disappeared without a trace. And I became invisible in his schedule. And slowly, in his life. We shared meals in silence. Passed salt instead of words. He scrolled through emails while I sat across from him. I stopped bringing up the distance. Because I knew the answer. And I wasn't ready to hear it aloud. Not yet. He stopped sleeping beside me. Said he worked late. Slept on the couch. Said the baby kept him awake. But I knew it wasn't our daughter. It was guilt. Or worse, indifference. And I began to sleep. With one eye open, and still, he never yelled. Never fought. Just faded. Bit by bit. Like a photo left in the sun. Until I could barely recognize him. Or the woman I had become beside him. I caught him mid-air, on a flight receipt emailed to my inbox. Boston to Miami. Unknown date. Unknown reason. But the line item said accompany, CM. His new initials. So ledgers and algorithms whispered the truth. I stared at the screen. In the dark, my heart in cold shock. That night, I waited for him in the foyer. He walked in with a suitcase and no greeting. He didn't drop it. He didn't look at me. He said, "I've been busy." Busy with her. The silence between us finally said everything. In his office I found a folder labeled Resources. Inside, photos of them at a conference. They smiled, leaned close. I flipped faster, lounges, dinners, shared hotel rooms. Their trip was more than casual, it was companionate. He had been loving her in contracts, while leaving me out of his plan. Our daughter didn't hear it all. She was asleep upstairs. But I tasted every betrayal with her breaths in walls above me. He came down holding his phone, saying gently, "I didn't want you to find out this way." But I already had. He just confirmed it. He brought dinner home. A thoughtful gesture, or calculated? He placed it on the table and said, "I thought we could talk." I looked from the food to him. To the folder on his desk. And then left the kitchen, leaving dinner, and him, untouched. He followed me to the living room. Sat across. Said he cared about our family. I asked him, softly, "Did you care enough to read the prenup?" He paused. He hadn't. Like he hadn't cared enough to see me. He nodded, voice small, controlled. Pages 2 and 3 said there was nothing. He didn't mention 7. He didn't ask forgiveness. He offered excuse. Polite. Practiced. Like a salesman who'd forgotten the product was destructively defective. In that moment, I felt both brittle and resolute. Brittle because of the betrayal. Resolute because of the page he'd never reached. I said, "You thought I'd get nothing. But you forgot that I planned for this." He looked down again. For once, speechless. He left the next morning. No goodbye. Just a note, "I'll pack on the weekend." One sentence. Erasing years in a line. He didn't leave shoes by the door. Just another absence. The house felt tremulous after he walked out. Echoes of footsteps vanished. Rooms seemed to inhale. My daughter and I sat on the couch, wrapped in her blanket. I held her tighter. 2 lives left standing. Later, I found the signed prenup. The binding clause sealed. He had signed it. He had agreed. He just didn't read it. And so I held the pen. And the clause. I sent him his belongings. Neatly boxed, labeled, delivered. No confrontation. Just order. Because when someone treats a marriage like a filing cabinet, you return the folders. Closed. I texted Clarice. She replied, "I told you." I smiled alone in the hallway, at grandmothers who draft legacies, and granddaughters who keep the ink. He posted on social media. She walked out with nothing. I replied publicly, and with page 7. He deleted it. It was quieter than any argument. He deleted me. That night, I tucked our daughter into bed. Looked at her face. Whispered, "We got more." Because sometimes, the best revenge is having already written your own ending. The day after he left, I woke up to silence. No coffee brewing. No keyboard clicks in the study. Just the hum of the refrigerator and a heartbeat too loud. I stayed in bed for hours. Not sleeping. Just trying to remember who I was before him. The house looked the same, but everything felt different. His absence wasn't empty. It was loud. It echoed in every hallway. Even the curtains seemed to fall more heavily. The bed, too large. The air, too still. I moved through the house like a guest. Uncertain of where to put my hands. Where to sit. What belonged to me now? What had ever belonged to me? I stared at the mirror and didn't recognize my own reflection. Just shadows. Of someone who gave too much. The kitchen table still had our daughter's breakfast crumbs. I didn't clean them right away. Not out of laziness, but because erasing them felt like erasing proof of something real. She still needed me. Even if I couldn't feel my own body. Even if I was running on memory. I received messages from mutual friends. Neutral. Too neutral. "Hope you're okay." He said you guys grew apart. No one said, "We saw what he did." No one chose sides. I stopped responding. Deleted the apps. Blocked his profile. Because watching him move on in public while I shattered in private was a cruelty I didn't owe myself. My grief didn't need an audience. One night I sat at the edge of my bathtub, fully clothed, holding a hairbrush. Staring at nothing. Not crying. Just paused. As if life pressed mute on me. And I didn't know how to unfreeze. I forgot to eat. Drank water because my daughter watched me. Laughed only when she said something absurd. Children don't know how to perform grief. They just need you to be present. Even when you're hollow. Especially then. I kept going for her. Morning routines. Bedtime stories. Brush, rinse, pack lunches. Some days I'd sit in the car after drop-off and let the silence devour me whole. But I never broke in front of her. The card from Clarice stayed on my desk. It read, page 7 was never about money. It was about reminding him what he underestimated. I read it daily. Not for validation, but for clarity. I wasn't crazy. I was calculated. I looked at old photos. Our wedding. Vacations. Moments where I thought we were aligned. I studied his face. Looking for clues. But he had always been smiling, only when watched. I realized then, I loved someone who loved. Being seen loving me. Not someone who knew how to stay in the unseen moments. Not someone who knew how to choose me privately, when no one was watching. That truth hurt more than the betrayal. But it was also my way out. I began writing again. Not essays or business plans. But memories. Moments. Truths I never spoke aloud. The kind of writing that bleeds, but also stitches. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted space. To breathe. To rediscover the sound of my own name without it being attached to his. I said it out loud one night. Just to remember how it felt, and slowly, grief stopped being a weight. It became a shape. Something I carried. But that no longer dragged behind me. It fit inside me now. Like truth. Like clarity. It began with a request from my lawyer, send me the prenup. So I did. And watched her eyebrows rise at page 7. She wrote that? Yes, I said quietly. It was the first time someone said it aloud. Clarice's words, on paper, were meant to protect me, and they waited. Next, we pulled the financial records. The firm he built with my initial investment. The condo he bought inside a company-funded bonus repayment. Everything post-marriage, everything I funded, was eligible. Because of page 7. And because he hadn't read beyond page 3. I authorized. Forensic accounting. Line by line. Receipts, invoices, wire transfers. Everything that tied back to my earnings. We compiled a detailed timeline, month by month. Investment by investment. Because facts don't wait for apologies, they wait for footnotes. Then came the strategic move, a formal petition, delivered via certified mail, quoting the prenup clause. Not aggressive. Matter of fact. Clear, according to Section 7, I am entitled to equitable redistribution. He would see that phrase daily. In his mailbox, on his nightstand, in black and white, simultaneously, I contacted the business registrar. Listed myself as stakeholder. Filed amendments. Official record. Public domain. He didn't know yet. Till the paperwork flashed his name alongside mine, louder than any confrontation. His lawyer called next. Angry. Demanding. But I stayed silent. Because I knew the truth was legal. It didn't need drama. Just process. Just precision. Then I attended the quarterly shareholder meeting. He was there, smiling, presenting results. I walked in with authority. Took a seat in the same boardroom. His assistant leaned in to whisper, "You're not supposed to be here." I replied, "I'm here. Because page 7 gave me a seat." Back. He didn't speak to me. But he watched. His presentation faltered only once, when I nodded to a shareholder asking about dividends. My presence shifted the room. The clause had shifted the balance. I didn't say a word. The law spoke. Then came the valuation reports. And the offer, a settlement that matched my contribution, and then some. He tried to downplay it as fair. But I knew he had misread both his contract and me. He priced out a woman who priced her own worth. I left the meeting quietly. Not triumphant. Just resolved. Because dignity doesn't need applause. It needs acknowledgement. And this room had given it back. That evening, I deposited the settlement. Closed my consulting firm's joint account. Updated tax forms. My name filled every line. Not Mrs. Reynolds. Just Julia Monroe. I texted Clarice, it worked. She replied, "You wrote the future." I folded my phone. Felt the weight leave my shoulders. Because process works better than performative drama. He sent a single message, "Congratulations." I replied, "Thank you. No bitternis. No need to gloat. Just a final acknowledgement, of a page he never read and a woman who never quit." That night, I tucked my daughter into bed. We whispered our own page 7 clause, that someone who seeks convenience over commitment loses both. She giggled. I breathed. And we slept, on terms defined by care, not contracts. I didn't post the win. Didn't share settlement figures. Didn't tag news outlets or hint at karma. But I made a quiet update to my firm's website. A new tab, Legal Partnerships and Contractual Strategy. Just under it, guidance rooted in lived precision. I began receiving calls from women in similar situations, from business owners who feared being erased in silence. They wanted to know how I'd structured my prenup. I never named names, but I quoted page 7 often. That clause became legacy. Elaine, a shareholder from the meeting, called me for coffee. Said, "You carried yourself like a statute." I smiled and said, "No. Just someone who planned beyond the moment." She offered me a board seat. Not as a favor, but as someone who had proven power through poise. I took it. First meeting, I entered quietly. My chair had my name, first and last. No attachments. Just Julia. He was no longer on the board. Resigned for personal reasons. I walked past his office one day. Saw the empty nameplate. Saw the way the receptionist avoided eye contact. He had told the world I left with nothing. Now I walked halls that once echoed his steps. And I didn't even pause. That was my answer. I returned the original prenup to Clarice. With a note. Sometimes protection comes dressed as doubt. She sent back a box. Inside, a gold pen. Engraved, "She who signs, decides." It rests on my desk now. At my daughter's next school event, I wore navy. The color he always claimed was his. I stood in the front row. He was in the back. His new partner looked at me, uncertain. As if she knew I had seen the whole script play out. When the school announced my name as guest sponsor, I didn't smile at him. Didn't acknowledge the glance. My daughter squeezed my hand. And whispered, "You always win." Quiet. I kissed her forehead. That was the only praise I needed. He emailed once more. No apology. Just, "I underestimated you." I didn't reply. Because sometimes, the absence of response is louder than any comeback. I saw him in a restaurant lobby once. He was waiting. I was passing through. He smiled briefly. I nodded. And kept walking. Because my silence was now fluent. My firm's revenue doubled. Not because I chased him, but because I chased clarity. Clients trusted what I had lived. Because strategy forged in pain becomes a blueprint for protection. Not just business, survival. I returned to Miami once. The hotel where he signed the prenup. I ordered a cocktail, sat by the window. Watched the sun burn pink across the glass. I pulled out the original document. Read only page 7. And smiled. I didn't keep his photos. I kept the receipts. I didn't wear the ring. I wore the knowing that sometimes, your greatest leverage is the clause no one expects you to write. There were no parades. No headlines. Just a woman who walked back into herself. With papers. With proof. With presence. And not a single scream. I moved into a new place with no shared memories. No drawers filled with forgotten ties. No passive-aggressive calendars or silences. Just space. Open windows. A daughter's laughter echoing like truth. And my name on every bill, every wall, alone. And hold on, I repainted the walls soft ivory. Reclaimed the quiet. Made a home that didn't apologize for warmth. Bookshelves stretched full of stories I hadn't read in years. I took up piano again. The sound felt unfamiliar at first, but honest. I hung the gold pen in a shadow box. Right beside a framed version of page 7. Not as a trophy. As a reminder. That the fine print of our lives is often where we find ourselves again. Line by line. My daughter asked one night, "Will Daddy come back?" I paused. Kneeled. Said gently, "Some people leave before they're gone. And we're not waiting anymore." She hugged me tighter. I began traveling again, this time for joy, not escape. Walked alone through cities that once made me nervous. Ordered dessert first. Spoke to strangers with confidence. Took photos with no one to impress. Just places. And peace. Old friends returned. Not to take sides. But to witness who I'd become. We laughed over wine, remembered who I was before the spreadsheet marriage. They said, "You feel like you again." And for once, I agreed. I changed my last name back. Not out of spite. Out of truth. Because Reynolds was a chapter. Monroe is the story. The woman who wrote her ending before he even noticed the plot twist. Clarice visited, brought fresh orchids. She looked around the new home and smiled. "You chose the long game," she said. I poured tea. "Because some men read 3 pages, I replied, "but some women write 7. She raised her cup. I published an essay anonymously. On contracts, silence, and strategy. It went viral. Women wrote to me in secret, thanking me. Telling me they'd added new clauses. Telling me they'd started reading again. He remarried. Quietly. No press. No fanfare. I sent no messages. Because closure is not a conversation. It's a quiet room you lock from the inside. And walk out of smiling. The night I threw myself a celebration, it was quiet. 5 women. Champagne. 1 cake. With no names, just a single phrase, "You remembered." I danced barefoot in the kitchen. With my daughter on my hip. The playlist was all our own. No requests. No silence used as punishment. Just rhythm. Just light. The greatest revenge was not taking more from him. It was taking everything I had given him and giving it back to myself. Bit by bit. Line by line. Until I was whole again. Unclaimed. Unbent. I never forgot what he said. She left with nothing. But now, I wake up every morning with a daughter, a business, a home, and a clause he never read, because he never really saw me, and that's how I won. Not by punishing him. But by finally choosing me. In silence. In strategy. In full. Page 7, signed, Julia Monroe.